Okay, folks, let's get cracking then. So thanks to everybody who's joined us today. As it says up on the screen here, my name's Kev Johnson. I've got Lars Fiectner here from VMware. We'll do a quick introduction in a moment. We're just here to talk about what's happened, what kind of new features we've introduced in the recent releases of Runecast Analyzer. So first of all, a little introduction. In case you don't know me, and there's a lot of names on this webinar that I don't recognise. So thanks everyone who's joining for the first time. I'm a systems engineer here at Runecast, so I kind of look after the kind of technical sales side of things, but also with dealing with engineering and making sure that all the feature requests that people bring up in things like meetings and demo calls and things like that. The good ideas make it through to the engineers and we can build those into the product. Prior to joining Runecast a few months ago, I was the technical marketing architect for vSphere Lifecycle at VMware. And prior to that, I was a consultant for a number of years. So I've been working in the VMware ecosystem for quite some time. Outside of work, as it says on the screen here, I like going for long walks in the country, which I'm not allowed to do at the moment. I like to watch Scottish football, which is all on hold at the moment. I like to travel places, which obviously, again, nobody's allowed to do at the moment. And I like to eat cheese. So needless to say, the fact that I'm stuck in a home, there's not a lot for me to do other than eat cheese. I've put on about 10 kilos since this whole situation started. But yeah, I have started running again, so hopefully that'll start dropping off again. Just going to hand over to Lars. If you want to introduce yourself, Lars.
Thanks, Kev, for the introduction. So my name is Lars Fiectner. I'm a staff technical account manager working for VMware in VMware's professional service organization. So I'm covering automotive company in Germany. So before I joined VMware 9 years ago, I was working as a consultant for SAP and SAP Education Services itself. That's the reason why I'm working a long time on SAP-related projects. In this case, also before SAP released SAP HANA itself. Kev, you mentioned some free time. Yes, the free time is at the moment building the house in this challenging time, and this keeps me busy.
Awesome, and thanks for joining us. Lars is probably the smartest guy I know. He's the absolute go-to guy when I need to know anything about SAP. I mean, it's just a magic set of words to me, but I understand. It's a very technical subject, and Lars is going to be going into detail about that a little later. So first things first, it was Star Wars Day yesterday, so we had May the 4th be with you, and today is Cinco de Mayo. So, the hat, everyone's going to be drinking tequila later. But yeah, again, thanks for taking the time out of your day to join us for this. So things that we're going to cover in this session, we're going to talk about the recent releases. This is the vast majority of what we're talking about. So we're talking about what we've had in the past few releases, a special call out for the free Horizon checks that we've got at the moment. So again, I'll talk about that in a couple of slides. We're going to talk specifically about the best practices for SAP HANA when you're running it on vSphere and how Runecast Analyzer can help you in that regard. And we can then talk about the release that came out about a week and a half ago, which introduced Enterprise Console, which is a thing that we were really asked to develop for some of our larger customers with very large environments where they need to actually have multiple Runecast Analyzer appliances. We'll talk about vSphere 7 support. So the vast majority of the features of Runecast Analyzer worked fine with vSphere 7 at day 0, but we've there were a couple of things that we found in testing post GA there. Then I'm going to give you a little sneaky peek into what's coming down the road from the team at Runecast. And finally, we're going to go through some Q&A. So rather than save your questions up for the end, there is a questions panel in the GoToWebinar control panel. If you could type your questions into there throughout the course of the webinar, and we'll address those at the end rather than having to have people frantically type them in at the end, that would be really appreciated. So where's my mouse gone? There we go. So I'm going to start in December 2019. So this was before I joined Runecast, but the 4.0 release was a pretty major one. So we introduced support for Amazon Web Services. So we have a very, it's a basic subset of the AWS services. So we cover EC2, S3, we cover identity and access management, and also the VPC. So they're the kind of 4 core features that we see customers looking at when they're starting to make their move into the kind of cloud native space, but maybe they've got to do some kind of infrastructure as a service kind of things in the first place. I expect to see more of these services coming online as time goes on, but that's kind of what we introduced. We also have the PCI DSS baseline, and we also get this dedicated AWS dashboard. So it looks a little bit different from the standard, the vSphere dashboard that we show you, but we really wanted to kind of show you where the resources were. It's a little bit different to kind of on-premises vSphere environment. So you get this dedicated dashboard there, and again, expect to see new features in there. Looks like we've got some issues with some unsecure S3 buckets by the looks of things. So in January 2020, so this year, we released our 4.1 release, and again, it was a fairly major release. As you probably tell already, we're pushing out these releases very, very quickly. So we have customers approaching us, and they ask us for new features, and where we can see demand for these features, we push those features out very, very quickly to market. And we really appreciate the feedback on these. So if you've got any feedback, by all means, speak to your account manager, reach out to us on Twitter or by email, and we'd love to make the product even better for you as we move forward. So with the 4.1 release, we introduced the Center for Internet Security as a security compliance baseline. And again, this was a compliance baseline that we had a number of customers ask us about. So we built it into the product, and as time goes on and we build more and more of these baselines into the product, there's a lot of crossover. So the work that's required to add another baseline and another baseline becomes smaller and smaller. So we can realistically turn these around very quickly. So the CIS baseline's in there, covers ESXi 6.5 and 6.7. There's nothing in there for 7 as yet. I expect once there's some CIS guidance, we will add that in there as well. We also had some updates to the DISA STIG baseline. So again, this is the big US military standard, and there was an update. So we went from version 1 release 1 to version 1 release 2 in there, and there was also some changes to the inventory view. Again, based on customer feedback. In March 2020, so this is after I joined the company, and I was really proud that we were able to do something here. We saw that that companies were struggling in terms of they all of a sudden had this major issue with staff that weren't able to work because of COVID-19. They were self-isolating, so everyone was operating on skeleton crews, and we thought, well, what can we do to help in this situation? So one of the things we observed was that a lot of customers were using VMware's Horizon products to enable remote working. So we thought, well, what can we do here? So we already had the Horizon checks in the product, but if you didn't have the Runecast Analyzer appliance, then you weren't going to be able to take advantage of that for very long. You get a 14-day trial, and then all of that stuff stops working. So now what happens is you download that 14-day trial, you deploy it into your environment, and after the 14-day trial expires, the Horizon checks continue to work until September this year. So if you have a Horizon environment and you're looking at ways of improving your security posture and things like that, then this is really, really helpful for you. And again, this is open to absolutely everyone. We also we saw that hospitals and the education sector were struggling, and so what we did was we extended free full licenses, and we've had conversations with a number of universities and various other educational establishments, and instead of saying, oh well, we'd like to take a look at the product, we'll take it for a 14-day trial, we'll see what happens. It's just like, well, we'll just deploy it into the environment. They get in touch with us, we provide them a full license which runs until September, and then we'll reassess the situation in September. That's pretty much, I think that's something to be really proud of, especially for such a small organization as Runecast. And in April this year, so again, we had a release in March, a fairly small update there just around the licensing changes. But in April, we had the 4.2 release. And 4.2 we introduced the best practices checks for SAP HANA on vSphere, and we also introduced the NIST 800-53 checks for vSphere, vSAN, and NSXV. So, you know, again, this is a fairly major US-based standard. We had a lot of customers that were asking for this, and it's by no means only used in the US. Though we have a lot of customers around the world who really wanted to be able to say, well, you know, we're abiding by the NIST guidelines. And at this point, I'm going to kick over to Lars, and hopefully he should be able to talk a little bit more in depth about SAP HANA on vSphere.
Thanks, Kev. So let's a little bit talk about the SAP HANA on vSphere. And before we jumping in the details and what is the benefit of the Runecast Analyzer doing SAP HANA Best Practice checks, let me a little bit go in. So I was too fast. Sorry for that. Let me dive in. What is the SAP HANA database? I think everybody knows it's the magic word SAP, and a lot of companies are running SAP and SAP on different databases. Doesn't matter if this Oracle, Microsoft SQL Server, DB2 or other. And as SAP decided to build their own database. What they figured out in the Hasso-Plattner Institute, what is one of the founder of SAP, is if we save the data in a different way, that we shrink the database itself, we can run the whole database in memory. So that's the whole story and covering behind that. So that was together with the Institute in Berlin and in the Stanford University in US, trying to save the data in a different way, running completely in memory, what give you additional and new opportunities, how fast you get data and how you can access the data. So this is a little bit the story behind. And I forgot the disclaimer. I put a slide here from SAP itself, that you have a little bit an understanding what this means. And SAP HANA is the future of SAP itself. Yeah. Today you can run it on any DB, what they call it itself, but the future is SAP HANA, and you will see more and more deployments on this database type in the installation of your or of your customer. Doesn't matter. And if we talk about the best practice, we have to clear how we're coming from and how SAP itself is coming from. And that I want to cover this a little bit from a history perspective. I think not everybody is really aware what this means and how old SAP itself is. So SAP was founded in 1972. Yeah, so it's before maybe I've grown older than you together. But you look like. So it was 5 guys from IBM. They was thinking, we do always the same. Why not creating our own company? Do it by our own. And after the first release, they released the R2. What is not released, it stands for real time. In 1979, it's like this typical host systems. Yeah, you have a display and your process is running on a host systems. And with that, after that, the world coming into client servers. 1992 was the year of client server. So they bring the present layer to the desktop itself and running the database in the data center itself. And after that, VMware was founded in 1998, a couple of years after SAP. SAP was growing, get the market leader in this area of business application and business solutions. And 2007, I remember this was the 12th of December 2007, VMware gets the official support statement by SAP itself for their technical platform, was in that time or still called SAP NetWeaver. So as a huge thing was on ASX4 a long time ago, was the first official support by SAP to run this kind of business critical application on vSphere. And as I said, SAP development their own database called SAP HANA. The first release was introduced in 2011, what called HANA 1.0. And between that and the non-production support, what is non-production meaning is the database or the business application is not your productive system. If you look to a SAP system, you have a lot of non-productive system. You have one productive system. So SAP decides a little bit or give you support to different kind of deployments. So 2012 we get the non-production support, and 2014 we get the official production support for vSphere 5.5. Yeah, there was the kind you're allowed official run it on vSphere HANA, and then we get the multi-VM support, what means you have multiple production VMs on the same host. And then SAP introduced the second version of HANA 2.0, and of course all of this is also supported today based on vSphere 6.5 and 6.7. And as you see from the history, there's a lot of things going on, and working together with SAP, they're working with so many companies. And what SAP is really doing, they working with us as VMware on the best practices and on the support statements. What I mean, there is a lot of SAP nodes. It's their knowledge base, article database, where you can find your information, and all of this information is in this node. So if you need to find which application type I have to deploy, in which way, if NUMA sharing allowed, is not, how big can it be a VM, all of the stuff is in this SAP nodes. And this is what we bring together. And I had a pleasure and proud to work together with Runecast on the best practices for Runecast Analyzer. So what we did 18 of these best practices in the tool itself. I want to cover a lot, some of them. So one is, for example, ensure your DRS is set to manual. What is the reason behind that? The reason behind it is if you design it, you have big VMs, you have a lot of memory that is constantly accessed. And if you have a high dynamic data center, you will move all the VMs all the time during your cluster. We want to avoid this. So that is one of them. Of course, set your memory reservation equal to configured memory. What it means, of course, this is an in-memory database. We want to ensure we have no ballooning or swapping on the hypervisor. Ensure hyper-threading is enabled. I know there's a lot of question about L1TF and site scheduler version 1 and 2. It's a little bit at the point how you see so, or how you're seeing this as a thread, and how you have one VM running on the hypervisor or several VMs on the hypervisor. But end of the day, we're checking if hyper-threading is enabled or not. As we saw in a lot of benchmarks, hyper-threading give you some more performance from a sizing perspective. And of course, keeping your VMware tools up to date. The reason behind this is SAP is keeping or tracking the hypervisor performance data, and therefore we're using the VMware tools to provide that to the SAP application itself. What we did also is ensure vCPU hot plug is deactivated. The reason behind that is if you have a hot plug CPU enabled, you get in an unbalanced vNUMA architecture from a hypervisor perspective, what has an impact to your SAP HANA database performance, and therefore the best practice is not to activate vCPU hot plug. Of course, the power virtualized network adapter, if you look to all business critical application, is the same guidance. Use the power virtualized network adapter. Do not overcommit CPU and memory. Memory is clear, CPU also. Regarding the sizing of SAP is always doing a brownfield. So you check your system and you get guidance by SAP, what is the core to memory ratio. But if you make a greenfield approach, you have to ensure you have the specific amount compared to the vCPU. And the last point, or one of the points I want to mention here, is enable the sub-monitoring. What I'm meaning is if you open a case to SAP itself, they have the ability to connect to your SAP system, and they want to know if you virtualized or not, if you virtualized, on which hypervisor you virtualized. And the last thing is they want to see how is the hypervisor performance. What it means, you have to configure two advanced parameters. One is on the hypervisor, one is on the VM. The best practice is checking, have you enabled these two advanced parameters to provide the data to the SAP application itself. All with that, I want to leave you with the SAP HANA on VMware Best Practice Guide regarding that. Some more things you have to know. What is your deployment types? You have to talk to your SAP guys, which this means. All this guide is in the Best Practice Guide. So I really encourage you to read this document. And if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask your VMware contact person or drop us a message. With that, Kev, I want to give it back to you for the demo.
Thank you. And again, that QR code that you can see on the screen, that will take you to that incredibly long URL that's down at the bottom. So you know, these white papers, these are really, really important when you're running business critical apps like HANA. So as Lars said, you know, please make sure that you're following the best practices. It will make your life so much easier. So yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to switch to my demo environment. I'm just going to make sure that I'm not switching to the wrong screen here. Bear with me a second. Oh, things that go wrong, that can go wrong, always will go wrong, right? Right, let's try that one again. So there we go, demo environment. So the way that we implement these best practices checks, if you've ever seen Runecast Analyzer before, it's gonna look pretty familiar. So I'll show you what they look like, but first I want to show you how we set them up. So the first thing we need to do is we go into the settings here, and we have these knowledge profiles, and these are, you know, all of the standard security compliance baselines that we use. Now, because this is a best practice check rather than a security compliance baseline, we have this section down at the bottom. You need to edit this and tick this box. You also need to specify a tag name, and that's I'll pick that up later. So because we can't see inside those VMs, we don't look into the virtual machines, so we can't see which virtual machines are running SAP. Then we need a way of knowing this. So we selected to use vSphere tags. You could use this as a tag. It could be anything you like, whatever you want, whatever your business logic determines. And we've got a little demo showing you how to set these up here. And we've also got a link here that will show you the documentation, how to assign tags in the vSphere web client if you're not familiar with doing that. But if I just show you here, we can see our very, very messy. We need to get this cleaned up a little bit. Do apologize about that, but yeah, so if we come in here, let's say this virtual machine is running SAP, we can come in here, we can assign a tag. We've already got a tag created, so we just create this tag. If we didn't have a tag created, we can click add tag, generate this tag for it, and assign that tag to that virtual machine. There we go. Live demos, something always goes wrong. Once that tag's been applied, the next time the analysis occurs, we will see some extra information in here. So if we come to the best practices checks, so we will see extra information. Oh, I have an echo. That's interesting. There we go, it's gone. Good stuff. So no, that's not what I wanted. Best practices checks. So we come in here. So we have, and then if we look at our products, we can see we have an option. We can filter based on SAP HANA. So if we filter here, we can see we've got all of these best practices checks that are happening in the environment. And these are, you know, so there's the checks that Lars mentioned. So you know, we need to enable SAP monitoring. All of these things need to be set up. And as you can see in our environment, we have got a bunch of big fat fails. So we need to make sure that we fix these things. So things like we're not using para-virtual SCSI controllers, so we're not going to get the best performance. And if you want to know why we need these para-virtual SCSI controllers, we can link directly to the best practices documentation. And there we go. Let's just say we agree to all of your cookies, because otherwise, yeah, there's a lot of information in here, and you know, this stuff is the source of all of these checks that we're using. But that's basically how it works. You apply a tag, you tick another box. You don't have to buy another product. You don't need to deploy another appliance. You don't need to download an extra management pack or anything like that. You just come in, you check the box, and you know, you can get that information straight out of there. And then from here, you know, we can export all of that information. And you know, if we want to be able to provide management reporting, we've got these capabilities here, so we can see all of our best practices, and we can check them off as we need to. So that's the SAP HANA on vSphere Best Practices. I didn't want to take too long showing you how it works because I think it's really, really simple, the implementation. But I just, again, wanted to really, really thank Lars for his cooperation and the help he provided to us in, getting these checks run past someone who understands the product far, far, far more than I do. So that's that bit. But if we move on, then we're making really good time here, so that's good. Yeah, so moving on, we then had a second release in April, which was the Enterprise Console release. And Enterprise Console is a feature that we were asked to develop for some very large enterprises, and also there's been a couple of managed service providers who are interested in this kind of functionality also. So as you probably know, Runecast Analyzer, it scales really well. We do have one of our largest customers runs something in the region of 14,000 ESXi hosts, and they monitor all of that using one Runecast Analyzer appliance. They can do that because they're not using the real-time log analysis. So if they were using log analysis, they'd have to span out across a number of appliances. But there's all kinds of architectural reasons why you might want to deploy more than one appliance. Maybe you've got some high latency between your sites, or maybe you're a managed service provider and you're monitoring environments for your customers. So you want to have this single pane of glass view of all of this. But you don't want to have to log into all of the individual customers on their own. So this is what we get basically. This is the Enterprise Console. We can see in here. In fact, I'll tell you what. Let's click on, and I'll show you the live demo, because everyone loves a live demo. If correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, this hat is, it's amazing, but it's making me very aware of how often I move my head because it's very loose when it's sat on top of the headphones. So Enterprise Console, let's take a look. So again, this is a feature. It's disabled by default. If you need this functionality, then we need to come in here into the settings and we need to turn it on. And any Runecast Analyzer appliance can be an Enterprise Console. So you could have multiple Enterprise Consoles if that's what you wanted to do. But generally, we would expect you would have a one-to-many relationship where you have one central Enterprise Console that monitors all of the other Runecast Analyzer appliances. So we come in here, Enterprise Console, we turn the feature on, and that's all you need to do. In terms of communication between this appliance and all of the others, it's all done over the RESTful API. So it's all done over HTTPS. So it's super easy to secure. If you need to set up firewall rules, it's TCP 443. It's all secured by SSL, or by TLS rather. So once you turn it on, you get this Enterprise Console dashboard button that appears up here. And we can see in here, we've actually got 3 Runecast Analyzer appliances. So we've got the one that's labeled as local analyzer. So this is the one that I'm logged into right now. We also have one that's called RCA-NA. So this is our North American one. And we've got one for Asia Pacific as well. So, we're using these to monitor many different systems. So one Runecast Analyzer monitors potentially many vCenter servers, and then from there, you can monitor many Runecast Analyzers. And we can see here we've got various ways of grouping together. So we've got these North America ones. We've actually created some groups here. So we've got an Asia group, but we can create groups in whatever method is logical to us. So we've got a group here called Customer 1. We can create another group for Customer 2. And then we can assign this. Let's say this one here. We can assign this one to Customer 2. So this is an initial availability. So we're putting it out there because we really wanted to iterate on it very quickly. So yeah, we have this functionality here. One of the first things we got asked was about having some sort of role-based access control, so that the account that's logged into the Runecast Analyzer that is the Enterprise Console, we could potentially restrict access to which of these systems or which of these Runecast Analyzer appliances you have visibility of. So that's a function that we're working on at the moment. And the other thing that we're working on is the capability to have the synchronization between the Enterprise Console and the remote appliances to be scheduled. So at present, in order to get that information, you have to come here and click the sync button. And this is going to take a brief amount of time. We're not pulling massive amounts of data in here. but we can see we've now retrieved data from all of these. And we can also see which version of the software we're running. So all of these are now running 4.3.1.0. Some of them were showing 4.3.02 earlier. If we needed to add some more, again, we come in here, we add a fully qualified domain name, we generate an API token on the remote appliance, and we use that API token to authenticate from Enterprise Console to the remote appliance. And that's all there is to it. It's super simple. We've got all of this information here, so we can see the number of issues that we found, how many criticals, majors, mediums, and lows, what information we've got that's come from syslog, our security compliance, and our best practices analysis, all from there. And if we needed to get some further information in here, so let's say we need to get more information on the APAC appliance, we can now just click straight through, and we'll be signed straight in there. So we can see from here, you know, once we load, there we go. So the reason we're not seeing any logs is because we haven't configured any SXI hosts to send logs to this appliance. And that, again, is Enterprise Console in a nutshell. You know, if this is something that you've got specific interest in, you know, by all means, reach out to us. We'd be really happy to have some further conversations with you around this. You know, if you've got ideas for new features that you think would be a really good idea, we're all ears. So, you know, we love getting this feedback from our customers. So that's the Enterprise Console demo. One other thing that came in the 4.3 release, and again, this was the second release in April, is this concept of custom repositories. So we do have we already have the capability to do updates in an offline manner. So you can go to portal.runecast.com where you download the appliance from, you download your licenses from there, and what you can do there is you can download the application updates and also the knowledge definition updates. So you can go there, you can download an ISO file for the application updates. You can then take that sneakernet to your Runecast Analyzer appliance, mount that ISO file on the appliance, log in at the appliance console, and you can do your updates that way. If you're in a position where you don't want your Runecast Analyzer appliance to be sending any information, you know, to have any internet connection whatsoever. And again, for those of you who aren't familiar with Runecast Analyzer, one of the really key differentiators between ourselves and a lot of the other you know, products that have overlap with us is that all of the analysis takes place on your appliance. There's no cloud-based services or anything like that to consider. So what we found is once we started kind of planning out the customer story about how people would use Enterprise Console, what they really wanted to do is be able to have one location that they could point all of their consoles to, and then essentially use that in a similar way to how you would with Windows Server Update services or the Update Manager download service in vSphere. So all you do here is we have our online repository. You can create a local repository. It just needs to be a Debian-based virtual machine. Maybe Debian, Ubuntu, any of the other derivatives. We should have a blog post going up in the next few days, hopefully, that will walk you through everything you need to do in order to set this up. But it's super simple. You know, I'm not a Linux guru, and I managed to set mine up in less than 10 minutes. And then all you have to do is go to your settings on your Runecast Analyzer appliances, all of these individual appliances, point them to the individual to this internal URL. So none of these appliances then are exposed to the internet, and you can still take the advantage of having that kind of automatic updates cadence. So you no longer have to go to a portal and download an update and then take it to your appliance, and you can do that in the same way as if you were exposing, you know, if you were pointing to the online Runecast repository. So the May 2020 release, so this came out yesterday. It was a little touch and go. I wasn't sure if it was going to make it out yesterday or whether we were going to maybe have to push it back a day or two. So yeah, I was super proud that this went out yesterday. So the big thing for this release is finally we can now say we have full support for vSphere 7. So vSphere 7, as I mentioned at the top of the show, there's you know, the vast majority of the features worked out of the box on general availability day. So that was really good. We'd already done a lot of testing against the beta code, so you know, we were in a really good place. But there were a few of the checks that we found that things like the things have changed to be case sensitive, and previously they started uppercase and now they're all lowercase and things like that. So we just had to make a few changes to a couple of the checks. That's all in there now. And also we got asked about a CPU override API for HCL checks, because at present we check if the number of CPU sockets that are populated within your servers matches the number of CPU sockets specified on the VMware HCL. So generally, most vendors will say yes, it's supported if you have a dual socket server, but you only populate one of those sockets. But we really struggle to get that confirmation from every vendor out there. So we put an API in there so that you can you can override that, so that you're not getting the warnings from the HCL checks. And again, if the HCL checks are something you're not familiar with, once we get to the end of this webinar, I'll pop up something on screen. There's an email address, email there, and we'll be happy to organize a demo for you. So that's where we are right now. And it's as you can see, we've had a number of really great new features brought to market. But we're not resting on our laurels. We're looking to pull out more and more features as customers request them from us. So just a quick sneaky peek at what we've got coming down the road. I really like this Dilbert cartoon, because Kubernetes is the new hotness, and I'm sure everyone has a boss that does something similar like that. I've definitely had them in the past. And sometimes it can be fun, and sometimes it's a really easy way to get exposed to new technologies and things like that. But sometimes you get those people that don't necessarily fully understand the technology, and when they say to you, oh, just put it in the cloud, maybe that's not what they actually want to do. So we're looking to automate some best practices checks for Kubernetes. So this will be vSphere with Kubernetes and other other distributions, other methods of running Kubernetes. So Red Hat OpenShift. If you want to roll your own Kubernetes, we're going to give you the capability to check these things. We're going to have some enhancements to the enterprise consoles. As I said, what we've put out there, we've said this is initial availability. We're putting it out there now, rather than spending months and months working on what we think customers want. So we got the basic product out there, and we're getting the feedback already. So if it's something that you're interested in, try it out. Give us a shout. Let us know your feedback. We'd be really happy to take any questions or any ideas that you might have. What things that basically we exist to help make your lives easier. We're going to be introducing the NIST checks, NIST 853 for Amazon Web Services, and again, we've got a few security baselines in there that cover AWS at the moment. We've got CIS, we've got NIST. As time goes on and more of these baselines, we get asked to introduce them for AWS as well. It gets easier and easier for us to all we have to do is spot the gaps that aren't covered by the other baselines, and then we just have to build those checks. We don't have to build everything from scratch again. So that's super important. We've got something we're calling custom checks. And this came from some feedback from a couple of demos that I did way back when I started a couple of months ago. It feels like so long ago. And what we got from customers was, this is great, but we have our own internal set of best practices. So is there any way that we could use Runecast Analyzer in order to check against our specific best practices as well as all of these others? And we thought about that, and we thought, that actually sounds super cool. The organization was obviously formed very focused on vSphere, and as time has gone on, we've kind of expanded that scope as people have asked us to. So custom checks is going to allow you to write your own checks. So there's going to be a lot of work we're going to have to do around documentation for that and the format that those checks need to be in. But eventually you will be able to write your own checks, write your own best practices, and use Runecast Analyzer to automate checks to make sure you're not drifting away from compliance for those. Finally, there's some more integrations with other products, and I'm just gonna drop a few, and I don't have any specific dates that I can give you. But vRealize Operations, vCloud Director, NSXT, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud Platform. All of these are, products and companies, in fact, that lots of customers are asking us about. So as customers ask us about them, we go, okay, well, what's the size of, what's the size of the problem? Is it something that it's worth us investing serious engineering time? If it is, then yeah, absolutely, we want to help you solve those problems. But that's pretty much where we're going. We do get asked all the time, are you going to integrate with product X, product Y, and product Z? But NSXT and Microsoft Azure seem to be the two major things that we're being asked for all of the time. And on that note, I am at the questions point. So let's just see what we've got. Please give us the link in chat. This was for the SAP HANA Best Practices. I'm guessing, Andre. What I'll do is, because in fact, let me just find which slide was it. It was this one. Let me just grab. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to grab that. So what I'll do is I'll get it put in the email. So after this is finished, there'll be a follow-up email that you'll receive, and I'll make sure that that we put that link in there for you. And then there's a question: how do we cash the checks we write? I'm not sure if that's a joke or something else. It's been a long few weeks, Tony. So can you elaborate on that check? On that question? I thought, yeah, it was a joke. Okay, cool. Good lad. Sorry, I'm very sleepy now. But yeah, I think the the capability to write your own checks is going to be a major win for a lot of people. So with that, we are we're pretty much done with the questions. So I'm just going to run through a few slides, which are just kind of to show you what we've got in terms of the product. Runecast Analyzer is a virtual appliance. You can download it, deploy it, and have it up and running within 5 to 10 minutes. Never uploads any data to the cloud. Everything happens on premises. We can manage. Oh, I've just spotted a massive typo in there. I'm going to have to shoot myself after this. I do apologize. So we support vSphere, we support vSAN, we support NSXV, we support Horizon, we support native AWS services. We're also certified for VMware Cloud on AWS. So if you're running VMware Cloud on AWS and you want to check your environments against the best practices, you can definitely do all of that using Runecast Analyzer. We've got a full RESTful API, so the documentation's all in the product. We use Swagger in exactly the same way as VMware do with the vSphere, with the on the vCenter, the admin center, excuse me. And we've got a vSphere web client plugin. So the vSphere client plugin allows you to see all of the information that is built into the Runecast Analyzer appliance. So all of those checks, all of that information, you can see inside the vSphere client. So because that's where you look most of the time as a vSphere administrator. I'm just going to flash past a few of our happy customers. So there's some in there. So I'm not going to read all these out to you. There will be a recording. You can definitely download these. But we have got a lot of really happy customers, especially with customers where their major constraint is staff that are wasting time doing troubleshooting and just doing menial admin tasks. We want to automate these checks for you so we can help make your life a lot easier. And again, another one there for Oni, who's a small, they're a data center service provider. They've only got 75 employees. So, the fact that they were previously running a really tight ship, they were previously getting 2 issues a month, and they reduced that down to 0 issues a month just based on proactive checks that Runecast Analyzer could do for them. And on that note, we've finished super early. But if anybody is interested, if you want to start a trial, go to runecast.com. There's in the top right hand corner of the screen, you can register for a free trial, download the appliance, deploy it into your environment, see what the findings are. And if you want to learn any more, or if you want to, if you'd like to have more of a deep dive with myself or one of my colleagues, if you email us at innovate@runecast.com, and we'll be happy to set up a deep dive for you. And on that note, I just wanted to say another big thank you to Lars for joining me and making me look slightly less ridiculous, even though you didn't wear a hat. But yeah, thank you for really helping out with the SAP. Runecast are really grateful for your assistance. And so yeah, if you've got anything else you'd like to add?
No, thanks for having me, and thanks for the opportunity to work together with you, as it was a lot of fun. And but the innovation doesn't stop.
It never does. No, you're absolutely right. It's and you know, we keep on trucking. So yeah, hopefully you know, some folks on here will find this quite useful. If you've got any further questions after the event, please reach out. We'd be more than happy to take those questions and, you know, help out in any way that we can. But on that note, I'm going to wrap up the recording and wrap up the webinar. I'll give you all 15 minutes of time back, which is just enough time to make another cup of tea or go and grab another cold beer. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks.